Today we're going to have a look at this pen. The pen was sent to me by Appelboom Pennen. Don't forget, check out my website because there's a 10% discount code on the page, my discount code page for Appelboom. And this is the Pelikan M120 Iconic Blue. Interesting pen, based on a blue Pelikan from 1955. Has some nice throwbacks to older pens, including the nib design. Comes in a nice box, and I like what Pelikan is trying to do, which is kind of a throwback to their vintage models. I recently had the opportunity to put this right next to the actual vintage pen, and I think I like the vintage model a little bit better, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm going to cover the parts of the pen. I will do a writing sample and I'll tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it. But there's some neat stuff on this pen, so let's get started. Ja, das Pelikan. I actually don't know if it's das or der or... Anyway, it's not a linguistic lesson, in it. Let's have a look at the box, because I think this is actually a pretty nice box. So unfortunately the customs opened it and tore this in half. Great, very grateful for that. You see, they really went for that vintage thing here. Günther Wagner, Hannover und Wien. Vienna? Does that really say Wien? Now I have to look this up. I have to look up the history of Pelikan. I knew that, but I didn't know that. My God, you learn something new every day. I hadn't noticed it before either. I only focused on this. Anyway, Pelikan, Schutzmarke, so trademark. You have the 4 baby chicks, you have the Pelikan. Oh, how cute. Okay. Then we have this little magnetic closure. Those things have become really popular. I see those in so many pen boxes now. You have this lovely... I have to move around a tripod here. This lovely watercolor, also very vintage looking. Günther Wagner, Fabriken für Künstlerfarben, Hannover und Wien. Paints, like artistry, paints for artistry. We have the little booklet, the guarantee, so the international warranty booklet. I see a lot of text. You have some stuff on the nib grades, which is always nice, how to look after your pens, how to ink them up, etc. So kind of like the standard fare in these booklets. And then you have the vintage label, but very much their standard bottle with the standard plastic lid. The Pelikan ink 4001 Königsblau, so the royal blue, which is also what is in the pen. If you hear weird noises, it's rather windy outside and the window is open and it's kind of being pushed in and out. So I don't know if you just heard that, really weird noises, but it's not me. Okay, here we have the M120 Iconic Blue. So as I said, inspired by the original M120, which was, I think it was launched 1955. It has a nice bit of curlicue on the nib, which was actually based, I'll show you that close up in a second. It was based on a catalogue from, I think it was actually a price list from 1889. So that curlicue, that's quite nice. Clearly historical gift box, so they're really nodding to the vintage pens. And you can get these with stainless steel nibs in the extra fine through broad range. So that's a bit of background on the pen. It's a small pen. I think there's no two ways about it. That's a Lamy Safari. For some people this undoubtedly will be very, very comfortable. I personally find it a little on the small side. But before we get into that, let's first look at the parts of the pen. So at the top here, and it's a little hard to show you, is an engraving, but it's hard to capture, of the Pelikan feeding its baby chick. Again, don't know if you can really see that. We have, of course, a stylized Pelikan bill clip right there. Nice detail. Then the center band, which says Germany on one side and Pelikan on the other. Barrel, piston turning knob. It is a piston filler, so if you want to unscrew it, don't hold it there. Cap unscrews. The clip is, oh, there we go. Stay there, mate. Okay, you little bastard, stay there. Good. Clip is fairly tight, but because of that little ski slope, it slips into a pocket or something really easily, and given the size of this pen, this could work in a breast pocket. Under the hood we have this section, tapers down, flares out a little bit. We have threads there, slightly on the sharp side, and it's not a terribly large section, so you do feel them a bit, but I don't find them really uncomfortable unless I really curl my middle finger down there. But I don't when I write, so I even though the section is a bit small, I don't really feel these threads. This blue patch is an ink window, as you can see there, quite nice. I love it when I actually take the time to put an ink window because it's just so much more convenient in a piston filler. Holds a nice amount of ink too, so that's quite nice. Piston turning knob, nothing on the end there. Now we have the plastic feed and the nib. Now I promised you that curlicue, I don't know how well you can see it, but there is all sorts of curly stuff going on there on the nib. It looks like it's gold, but it is in fact steel, so it may be gold plated, but in any case it's a steel nib, not a solid gold nib. It says B for broad and has the little pelican feeding his baby chick on there again, and that's pretty much all there's to it. One of the great advantages, of course, of these pens that you can just grab this, not like that. I would hold it like this, and you can unscrew the nib unit. I'm a little careful now because it is inked, but if you have other nibs that fit the M120 sized pens, you can easily exchange them, which is one of the great things, I would say, about Pelikan. I think I've covered everything adequately. It is a smaller pen, but it does post very comfortably, and then you have a really nicely sized pen, I would say. So let's zoom in a little bit and do some writing, shall we? That window is very noisy. The iconic blue. I have had some issues recently with Pelikan nibs, but this one I find very pleasant. Steel broad, and the ink is their the Königsblau by the same brand, Royal Blue. Very pleasant nib, smooth, juicy enough to, and the Royal Blue, I find it a slightly drier ink, not super dry, but it is a bit drier. So it writes pleasantly, flows nicely. I think that's an M. And it's smooth, very pleasant. I really like it. Pretty good. No real skips, a little bit there, but I think that was me mislining the nib. In general, I think pretty nice. Okay, let's look at the wetness. Pretty wet, which is very nice. Line variation, as always, very, very careful when you do this. And as you can see, there is a little bit of springiness to it, but it is steel. Don't push it too far. Very, very, very light touch, huh? Reverse writing becomes scratchier, but you can get away with a couple of words, and you definitely go from a broad to, I would say, an extra fine, because that's very fine writing. So not at all bad, and kind of a fun pen. Now let's see what I like about it. Couldn't get the cap off, but there we go. Let's see what I like about it and what I not like about it. Okay, so what do I like, what do I not like about the Pelikan M120 Iconic Blue? There's a couple of things I like. The vintage design is cool. I am not really a user of vintage pens, but I do like what Pelikan is trying to do by bringing back their older vintage pen models. I will come back to that in a second. It's a piston-filled pen, which is kind of nice. It's kind of cool because you do have the large ink capacity, and I do have a nice ink capacity of these pens, which I enjoy. You have the ink window, which is a nice thing because it really does help in assessing how full the pen is. You have a smooth nib because it writes smoothly, occasionally maybe a little bit too smoothly, but I personally didn't have issues with this particular nib. I have used over-polished Pelikan nibs in the recent past, but this one, as far as I'm concerned, seems to be okay, even on smoother paper. And another nice thing, of course, is the nibs are interchangeable. So if you happen to have another 100 size pen, your nib should fit on it. Sometimes with the real vintage pens it's a little different, but with the modern pens there should be no issue, so you can easily interchange nibs, which is nice. Okay, then there are a couple of things I don't like so much. One is this, that the original pen, which as I said earlier I have held recently, that was a much more intense blue. The color of blue, the shade of blue, is definitely not the same as the vintage pen, and I have noticed that before with the other vintage reference models that Pelikan did. They definitely resemble the original, but the exact color, the exact finish is definitely not the same. Which in a way is kind of a shame, because if you're going to go through the trouble of making the vintage box and the vintage ink label and all that stuff, why not try to create something that's closer to the original? I think the biggest issue with this pen is that it's expensive for what it is. It's listed at Appelboom, again, who sent me the pen, for 195 euros. Now, remember, you can get a 10% discount if you use my discount code there, but almost 200 euros for a pretty small pen with a steel nib. I think we're kind of pushing it at that point. I would probably be willing to pay about 125 euros for this, but that's kind of it. Now, on the other hand, you do get a bottle of ink, you have nice packaging and all that, but at the end of the day, it's the pen that you really want and that you buy, right? Because the ink is not even a special formulation, it's just their regular Königsblau, which is, I assume, their best-selling ink. So, I don't know. I find it expensive. So as far as I'm concerned, the bottom line is this. Really cool attempt, nice vintage packaging, cool set with the ink and all that, but expensive for what it is. Okay, I hope this was useful. That's all there's to it, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.